It's Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Linda Baas McClelland.
And this is It's Movie Time. Oh, Linda.
Oh, Johnny.
Listen.
Yes.
There is that artistic side of you, and then there's very pragmatic, realistic side to you. So we have a movie today called Fury, starring Brad Pitt. And while we're here to talk really aesthetics, it's also interesting to me how this film, affected you because of the military background in your family. That is, you have a son who was an officer in the Marines. So I have a feeling that maybe you could respond to that relative to the film.
Okay. I was trying not to be affected by the film because I am so involved in my son's activities. He was served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I've heard many tales about that. But so I tried to step away from that and be more objective about it, even though it was always in the back of my mind. And at some point in the film, you probably listened to me sobbing over on the seat next to you because I was so affected by it, because I was taking some of it personally. But I tried not to do that in most of the movie. So
this is a fiction. Brad Pitt plays a master sergeant who commands a tank patrol, Sherman tank particularly, at the end of World War II. And I guess what you're referring to, and what I would refer to, is the realism of the film.
Oh boy, I mean, you could smell the blood, the mud. There was so much mud, the sweat, the fear of these guys. It is the end of the war in April 1945, and they're driving this tank through Germany, city by city, killing any enemy that gets in their way.
Yeah, Hitler had mobilized the entire population, including women and children, in a last-ditch effort when clearly the end of the war was coming, which is part of the irony of the film, is that these soldiers are putting themselves on the line for a war that's in effect almost over. Right? Yeah.
They just want to make it out alive, and you can feel that very strongly.
Well, there's a set piece in here where they have to face off toward the end. They have to face off over 300 SS soldiers coming down, and they're only left out of the 4 tanks. There's only this one left with the 5 of them, and so the odds are incredible. And that's part of the non-realistic part of the film. Right? You know, there's no way that they could ever face them down or do the damage that the film shows them to do.
Oh, I believe they could.
All right.
With Brad Pitt being their commander, yes.
And you may remember Pitt in *Inglourious Basterds*, where he also was a Nazi hunter. Mm-hmm. A far better film for, Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
Is a much better director than David Ayer. We just go. It's not a race whenever you're going with Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
But the same, that it misses the texture to me of *Inglourious Basterds*. But I think, for me, it's a solid war story.
It's very action-driven. Just don't look for any deep messages. The messages are obvious. That is, obviously they're right there.
Yeah, you have other characters in here. One played by Shia LaBeouf, who plays Boyd Bible Swan.
He's great. He even cut his own face and pulled out one of his teeth to get more into character.
Isn't that amazing?
And John Bernhal was just this borderline psychopath.
Right.
But there isn't much character development. They're inside this tank. That's their home. And it was realistic to me because I was so glad there weren't any flashbacks so you would get to know them better, because they are concentrating on the end of the war. You don't need to know any more about them than what you see in the tank and when they're just trying to stay alive.
That's a great comment. Although I will throw in the one scene in the home
Yes.
They meet a couple of ladies,
Right.
and
That was a nice relief.
it was a relief. There's a case of where, God darn it, you have to throw in some romance, and 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 the character of Norman, played by Logan
He was
Lerman,
great, yeah.
was very good. But he is the stereotypical wet behind the ears young guy,
So
typist,
green, yeah.
thrown into this tank patrol at the end of the war. That assignment itself seems absurd, although I'm
Yeah.
sure your son would say those things do happen.
They do happen, yes. But you know, I thought they needed that brief respite from this, just so much violence and blood and loud noises, just a touch of domesticity to show you how dreadfully absurd war really is. And of course it doesn't last long. And also I enjoyed the bit of Brad Pitt beefcake that you get in that scene.
Yeah, right. There's a shot of him shirtless, and he's
Yeah.
clearly been working on his body, and
For
he looks great. A
40
little bit out of
seconds.
proportion.
Yeah.
What you would expect. I mean, he's been at war for a long time. You can't.
Right, he would not have looked like
Right,
that.
he would have not. But anyway, but it was good. But to add to yours, which I like very much, the idea of the domestic versus the violent and gritty. I liked, and I still haven't worked it out, in that scene. So what happens is that you're not sure what Pitt and then Norman are going to do with these two ladies. One of them is a voluptuous young woman, and you can't help but think, are they going to rape her or not?
Oh.
You know, and that's at the background. And I think, and she serves for me as another way for this young man quickly to grow up. You know, and
Right.
if he connects with her in some way,
Mhm.
that's another step in the stage of Pitt's character,
Right.
called War Daddy, actually,
Right.
in bringing that young man up to speed.
Mhm.
Because my reservation about the film is that all happens within the course of a day. And I know that war accelerates anything, but the way that this kid changes from the beginning toward the end may happen a little bit too fast for me.
Yeah, right. It probably did happen a little bit too fast. But seeing Brad Pitt as War Daddy, I got the feeling that he would never hurt these two women. That he was just had a better
Yes,
character
yes,
than that.
yes.
And I thought he did a great job.
Yes.
Brad Pitt's Brad Pitt, but he blended in with the rest of the cast. I thought so perfectly.
Well, let me add
He
to
doesn't
that.
set himself apart at all.
No. Let me add to what you're saying. In that scene, again, this is a German home. The girls have been hiding. They found him. And after he and Norman have worked out the dynamic with the two women, the rest of the tank patrol comes in. And what happens here is a real threatening menace.
Mm.
These guys are unloading in many different ways. And Pitt that scene is such a study in leadership.
Yes.
I really, for those of you who love to see these films and maybe even use them in the classroom, here is a case of where the Master Sergeant, clearly in charge, allows his troops to go to a certain level
Mm-hmm.
that is almost uncomfortable.
Right. He sits there and just watches it
Yeah,
play out.
That's very
I thought
cool.
that was very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, let's also add to here another part of the menace, which is mechanical. The Germans had Tigers,
Yeah,
is
talk
the name
about
of their
the tanks.
Yeah, and these tanks really were superior to ours. It's hard for us to think as Americans that anybody has anything superior to us.
Right.
In the Second World War, German tanks and tank destroyers
Right.
were superior to ours.
Indeed. Yeah, our tanks were very thin, and some of the crews inside the tanks were just incinerated because the tanks weren't thick enough and strong enough
Yes,
to
yes,
absorb
yes.
all the stuff that was thrown
There
at them.
is a great scene, Linda, and I'm sure you remember it, when the two tanks, the German and the U.S. tank, are facing off, and they do a dance that's delightful.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Pitt's tank comes around
well,
behind.
not Lindy. I know.
Okay.
Right. But they do engage in a combat that's almost a ballet.
Oh, definitely.
It's
definitely.
probably one of the most delicate.
Excuse me.
It's probably one of the most delicate parts of the film, and yet it's just rude, and as you say, full of mud
Oh my
and
God.
blood
Yeah.
and so on. So, and yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, the cast is so good. Especially, I thought the boy who played Norman,
yeah, Logan Lerman. I think.
Logan Lerman, is that his name?
Yes.
he becomes our eyes and ears. You see all the dreadful things that are happening through his eyes.
Yeah.
And at least I did.
Oh, sure. No, I agree. And everything is really focused on his
Right.
development because the rest of them have been through. They have been since Africa with each other.
Right.
And so he's new, thrown in. It's it's a bit of a
Yeah.
cliche. We know that, but I think they handle it really well in his
Right.
development, given the circumstances of cinema and drama.
Right. In one scene, doesn't War Daddy say to Norman, "Do what you're here to do," and which is to kill people.
Right.
And this poor kid was just shaking. And it led me to think, would I be capable of killing somebody in a situation like that? Well, I guess I would.
Sure.
Uh,
And there is some, again, another unbelievable part where somebody's spared. I won't give any more information.
Right.
And that seems kind of unbelievable. But before, and we're getting to that point, but before that, I have to say, the opening is so spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of what Quentin Tarantino might have done.
right.
In the distance, you have a rider. This could be Clint Eastwood riding on a horse. And there's fog and just almost as you would think of World War I. And he's approaching a battlefield, coming from a distance. And then as it gets closer, the rider and the horse get closer, you find out exactly who it is. And then you have something happening
Yeah.
immediately, which I thought is just a powerful moment.
I agree with you. I thought it was almost ethereal.
Yes, it was a great one. Well, Linny, we're at that point. Oh, look at you! You
I
have
have
something
one more
else to
thing to
say.
say.
Oh my gosh!
Like now I can't remember what it is. I love that the guys were so full of testosterone. After one just bloody battle, bombs, bullets, and everything, they were in the tank and they all looked at each other and they said, "This is the best job I've ever had."
That's right.
Which is a typical soldier mentality. They have to feel that way.
That's
They
right.
have to feel
Right.
that way.
Just as I think you alluded to, Pitt's character, War Daddy, repeats more than once. This is home.
That's right. Yeah, the tank was their home.
All right, Linda.
Yes, John.
The film is Fury.
Yes.
It is Brad Pitt's film with a bunch of other, less than Dirty Dozen.
Right, but great actors.
But great actors. What grade, Linny, would you award this?
I'm going to give it a B, Johnny, because it was captivating, and the only fault I had was there was very little character development, but I accepted that after a while.
Yeah. And I'm going to, because good Lord, we can't look like we agree ahead of time. But I have to give it a B too. It's on my review, and I'm with you all the way.
Okay.
It's not a great film, but it is a good film.
You can't compare it to Saving Private Ryan.
No, right, good one, yeah.
But it's still, it grabs you,
Yeah.
and I recommend going to see it. So.
It's the next best. It's the next. Listening. It's the next best thing to going to war.
Yeah. Who wants to go to war?
Right.